yo guys, how are you doing? I hope fine, cause the games we are going to talk about could possibly ruin your day. Yes, most of the time I make well-informed decisions and buy awesome hidden gems for my collection. But sometimes I end up with a good old-fashioned shitty game too. And the PS360 era had a few of them. And today we are talking about the worst PlayStation 3 games. As a fair warning, if you've never played these games, keep it that way. And with that said, kick the like button, grab yourself a pizza and a mask, because some of these games are real stinkers. Now that we have set the mood for horrible things to come, let's kick off this list with Beowulf, the game. I was a real fan of the Beowulf movie, so when I learned that there was a movie licensed game in the making, I was hyped. I was thinking, what could possibly go wrong? And in case you missed the part of the intro where I said, but sometimes I end up with a good old-fashioned shitty game too. Things went horrible wrong in Beowulf. In hindsight, I should have known better. Beowulf the game had an opportunity to be a standout movie license game. Unfortunately, the glitching and blurry graphics engine and stupid AI sidekicks made this game hard to enjoy. Our NPC buddies did end up on the low end of the IQ scale. These Norsemen were surely dropped the hardest at childbirth. Combined with the clumsy combat mechanics, uninspired enemies, and the repetitive QTE button mashing, Beowulf the game ended up on this list. The problem here is the game leans heavily on QuickTime events, and these gameplay segments didn't age too well. It's not all bad. I have to give the game credits for its music and one-liner filled dialogues, which is always a huge plus for me, and the song Beowulf and his boys are singing to bring out Grendel was pretty cool. There is a good game hidden in there somewhere, but the repetitive gameplay and focus on QTEs ruins the little bit of fun you have with the bloody gameplay. And it's sad that an epic classic like Beowulf gets treated this way. It seems like it's the same treatment that the sequel to one of my favorite PS2 Vietnam shooters got, Shellshock 2. Blood Trails. Shellshock 2 Blood Trails sounded like a match made in heaven. A Vietnam shooter with zombies. And the story starts out strong too. As a new member of a mysterious squad, we have to find the ominous White Knight.
The White Knight.
White Knight.
White Knight.
White Knight. White Knight.
White Knight.
And somehow our brother is involved in the whole military conspiracy cover-up too. But after finishing the single player campaign in around 3 hours, I have to say the controls and the generic shooter gameplay leave a lot to be desired. Shellshock 2 plays and feels like a budget title. The visuals, level design, AI and just about anything else you can think of can't match with the first part on the PlayStation 2. Shellshock 2 is a bare-bones linear shooter, and not even its admittedly interesting premise could keep it from feeling unfinished and kinda unnecessary. I would say if you get it for dirt cheap and go in with the right mindset, then there is a bit of fun to be had. I somewhat enjoyed the dark and gritty plot and the dark tone of the story. Overall, you have to keep in mind that this is clearly a low-budget game, but Shellshock 2 is one of the few games on this list that I actually finished. The same can't be said for Hellboy, the Science of Evil. Superhero games can be hit or miss. Sometimes, like in the case of Ghost Rider, we stumble upon an awesome hidden gem. But on the other side, there's always a game like Hellboy. The biggest problem in Hellboy, the Science of Evil, are the core gameplay loop and the story. The combat in Hellboy gets repetitive before the first level ends and never presents a challenge. Even the story, which starts out interesting, ends up as generic as they come. The classic tale of chase the bad guys around the world we have seen so many times before. This time we are on the trail of a crazed witch, and along the way uncover that the axis of evil have a plot for world domination. The story didn't pique my interest, and after the third level I still had the feeling that it was going nowhere. Combined with the unintuitive gameplay, Hellboy the Science of Evil became really tedious. The enemy design is generic, and beating up goons as Hellboy feels slow and unresponsive. And when watching unskippable quicktime events play out over and over again gives you time to question your life choices, you know that it's better to move on. Preferably not to play Kung Fu Rider. But let's start with the good first. It has Kung Fu in the title. Kung Fu Rider is definitely not as funny as you think it is. It feels like a game that would have belonged in the arcades. Its premise and gameplay are simple. Kung Fu Rider sends us on a wild ride through the busy streets of Hong Kong as a private detective or his skimpy dressed assistant, which have to escape the mob by grabbing their office chairs, hold on tight and slide through the streets in order to make a daring escape. The game is basically about riding four-wheeled objects down the street while kicking goons, grinding on long poles and reaching the goal within a time limit. This is what you do the whole game, and it can be beaten in 1 or 2 hours. The problem here is that this wacky action game doesn't contain any of the fun hinted at by its goofy premise, and you can only play it with your PlayStation Move. There is no controller support whatsoever. If you're a diehard Move supporter and get it on a bargain bin price, I would say give it a try. But for everyone else, you better off making a daring escape from this purchase. As I said before, this game should have been in the arcades. Another game that would have fitted into the arcades is Heavy Fire Afghanistan. As a huge light gun shooters fan, I grab every on-rail game that is available if I have the chance, but damn, this purchase did backfire. Heavy Fire Afghanistan is as bland as they come. To be honest, as a light gun shooter fan, you don't have high expectations for these games. Decent story, so bad it's good voice acting, and fun shooting mechanics. But Heavy Fire Afghanistan is on-rails garbage and as generic as they come. Actually, I think calling the story generic is giving it too much credit. It's told in walls of text and goes something like this. We are average Joe who wants to be a Marine and is tasked to gun down unlimited waves of goons in the name-giving third world country. And if light gun games like House of the Dead have a better story than this dumpster fire, then you know enlisting for service in Heavy Fire isn't a smart choice. You don't care about the story or what's going on. It all comes down to pointing and shooting while the game continues forward. At the end of every chapter you can upgrade a perk such as health or reload speed in a skill tree, which you're in dire need of because you can die fairly quickly in this game and the hit detection is all over the place, literally. Combined with the aiming mechanics, which feel way too sensitive, the levels all look identical, and most importantly, the shooting and enemy animations all feel subpar. Even as a hardened on-rails gamer, I found it hard to enjoy this game. And finishing it made me wish I had replayed the Afghanistan levels of Rambo the video game instead.
Now you see the truth. They talk of the honor in war. There is no honor here.
Heavy Fire simply isn't fun. It's a boring grind fest, making this 3-hour game a drag to go through, and after you finished it, it will feel like 13 hours have passed, and all you have to show for is a severe case of PTSD. So I thought a relaxing trip to the south of the border would ease some of the pain. But I couldn't have been more wrong. In Call of Juarez, the Cartel, things went south for the Call of Juarez series. With an itchy trigger finger, I started this game. The previous Call of Juarez games were effectively interactive spaghetti westerns, and I expected a modern world version of it. But you know, the thing about itchy trigger fingers is that you could easily end up shooting yourself in the foot. And that's exactly what happened when I bought this game. Call of Juarez the Cartel simply feels unpolished and unfinished. It had a lot of great ideas for the gameplay, but from the animations to the shooting, everything feels underdeveloped. For example, animations and moves of all characters were just looking awful. Multiple glitches and 2 game-breaking bugs did only add to my frustration. However, I have to give the game some credit for its plot. As a team of misfit law enforcement agents, we are working together to take on a Mexican drug cartel. The story wasn't too bad, and the don't trust anybody atmosphere between the main characters was great and even part of the gameplay. From time to time we were asked to perform certain tasks without our fellow agents spotting us, like stealing a mobile phone or some money behind our partner's back. I would say the story with its twists and turns is worth experiencing if you know your way around a somewhat generic first-person shooter, preferably in online co-op with 1 or 2 friends. It makes fighting the brain-dead AI NPCs and helicopter bosses so much more enjoyable. Before we go from one generic helicopter boss battle to the next and talk about the top 3 worst PlayStation 3 games, it's time for a coffee break with Salesman Kick. What is up, guys? Everyone is ordering his physical games online nowadays, am I right? So why don't you order your physical games through my PlayAsia link and support your favorite YouTuber? If you order over $49, worldwide shipping is free. Games will not be shipped by Beowulf's crew. And now, on with the program. And where did we stop? Oh yeah, generic helicopter boss battles. Let's talk about another by the numbers shooter with a great premise that ultimately fails to deliver. Mindjack. I was hoping for another binary domain style game, but I ended up with a dull, uninspired and kind of unfinished shooter. Mindjack presents itself as a single player game that can be at any moment turned into a multiplayer game. The general premise is that other players can hack into your game at any time, either as an ally or an enemy, and influence the way the game is played. But during my playtime this didn't happen once, and as a single player experience, Mindjack only gave me an enormous headache. The lack of checkpoints, low IQ enemies, and the unfinished mind capturing mechanic made this playthrough just frustrating. The ability to turn incapacitated enemies into mind slaves is cool, but it didn't work properly. Enemies typically die before you can possess them, or you shoot them unintentionally cause the combat mechanics are way too clunky. Even worse, sometimes the prompt to possess an enemy seems to be broken. It's up to sheer luck if the prompt will appear. On top of that, the graphics are mediocre, the AI is brain dead, the story is uninteresting, and for some reason we lose all our weapons after every level. At least this game has so bad it's good voice acting.
You're a high-profile activist and your file's got a 5-star pain-in-the-ass rating.
Overall, Mindjack is a shooter worth skipping for me, and talking about it, I should have skipped the next game on this list as well. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Shadow of Mordor is one of my favorite games of all time. And now you're probably wondering, how did one of the best games of all time end up on this list? Well, my smart and good-looking viewer, you probably haven't played the PS3 version of Shadow of Mordor yet. As a huge Lord of the Rings fan, I was hyped when I learned that there was an Arkham-style Middle-earth game coming. Little did I know that out of all versions available, I picked the wrong option. Shadow of Mordor on the PS3 is an unfinished mess. The game is full of lag, tons of sound and graphical glitches, and a frame rate that would have been fitting for a stop motion style game. It's a massive shame that one of the greatest games of all time had to suffer such a terrible fate. They should have given the PS3 version the Tom Bombadil movie treatment. Only buy this if you're a diehard loading screen fan, because half of the PS3 Shadow of Mordor experience is looking at loading screens. Look at the map, loading screen. Back to the game, loading screen. Pick up a collectible, loading screen. Back to the game, you guessed it, loading screen. To think that releasing a game in this state is even legal is quite sad. If you're even thinking about purchasing this game on the PS3, you better off throwing your money into the dark pits of Mount Doom. This game often runs at 15 frames per second and has awful unfinished graphics that orcs float and fly around or spaz out like glitchy ragdolls. No amount of updates can fix this game. If you want to relive the base PS4 Cyberpunk 2077 experience a generation before, grab yourself a copy of Shadow of Mordor for the PS3 and suffer through the experience. And now you might be thinking, how could it get any worse? Well, Shadow of Mordor is an amazing game on other platforms, but the next game on this list managed to murder my favorite game series of all time and slashed my hopes for a new Ninja Gaiden game in half. Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. What can I say that hasn't been said about this game in my 15-minute monologue? The idea behind it sounded cool. A more arcade-style Ninja Gaiden spin-off with zombies and a main character with an attitude. And the intro gave off an interesting vibe, with Yaiba fighting Ryu head-on only to get sliced in half and laughing like a maniac while dying. But as soon as the gameplay started, I felt something was off. As a longtime Ninja Gaiden fan, the controls and gameplay felt unresponsive and rough. Fighting low-level goons is okay, but those mini-bosses in between are a prime example of damage sponges, and you can beat the crap out of them without having any impact. Yaiba's unbalanced and rage-inducing difficulty provided me with the complete opposite of the tough yet fair system in the original Ninja Gaiden series. Overall, Yaiba was a huge disappointment, and disappointment sucks. I set out to capture a few levels for you, but I couldn't take more than a few minutes of it before I had to cut it off. As a Ninja Gaiden fan, this is pure torture to play. This game stands as a warning in my collection. To be honest with you, some people's trash is another person's treasure. A ton of my viewers hate Rogue Warrior, but I had an absolute blast with it. And while I was making this video, some of you told me that you did actually quite enjoy Yaiba. So, let me know what you guys think of my worst games on PlayStation 3. Which game did you absolutely despise? Which game did you hate with a passion? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, kick the like button, sharing is caring, and subscribe. But most importantly, have a great day and get the kick out of gaming.